Hi, everyone. My name is Devin. I work at the Worcester Public Library, and today I'm very excited to have with me Dr. Frederick Gooding Jr. Thanks so much for being here today.
My pleasure.
Dr. Gooding got a PhD from Georgetown University. He's an associate professor within the Honors College at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas. Gooding critically analyzes race within mainstream media, effectively contextualizing problematic patterns based upon their historical roots. As such, Gooding's best known work thus far is You Mean There's Race in My Movie? The Complete Guide to Understanding Race in Mainstream Hollywood, which has been utilized in high schools and universities nationwide. Also, the co editor of Stories from the Front Room, How Higher Education Faculty Overcame Challenges and Thrive in the Academy. Gooding has stayed focused on the practical applications of equity with his 2018 book, American Dream Deferred, carefully detailing the growth and struggles of Black federal workers in the post-war era. His latest book, Last Oscar, from May 2020, expands his reach into cultural studies by analyzing African American Academy Award winners and how their narratives reflect and reinforce larger American history. You're a busy guy, so let's just get right down to the questions. I'm curious what drew you to media and movies, and at the same time, how you became interested in higher education.
Sure. Well, everyone loves the movies, Devin, and I am no exception. And I think movies are an overlooked resource that reflect and show what our mainstream society is really what it's about. I think there's nothing like the written word, and that's why I believe in the hallowed spaces of our libraries. It is indeed a pleasure to spend so much time in the libraries as a youth and now to contribute in some small way by writing books. But at the same time, I don't think we can overlook the impact that visual media has upon us. I mean, think about how television show or a movie can be shared by so many people at an instant, right? And even though for any of the listeners or viewers have never met me before, never seen me from a can of paint, if I say Miracle on 34th Street, it's like we all share the same memory. No, and it's not like you saw a different version and I saw a different version. No, it's the exact same version. So in many ways, these are profound common denominators that bring us together. I mean, I think they go up there with the weather in terms of, conversational topics, right? In terms of just, were you there when Avatar came out, and where were you if you hadn't seen Titanic, right? That sort of thing, right? And so I just think that to the extent that they reflect and reinforce mainstream society, we should look a little deeper as to what, keep watching what we're watching. And with respect to how I got into higher education, the fact of the matter is that I unfortunately tried sharing my thoughts with my family, apparently too many thoughts. And so they said to me, listen, we love you, we love your commentary, but you need to take the show on the road and outside of our living room. We're just trying to watch the movie. You need to write a book about this. So I said, fine, I will do that. And here we are.
All right, well, advice from family is usually pretty good. So we're definitely going to talk about Oscars and movies, but first I wanted to talk about one of your earlier books that sounded really interesting to me, The American Dream Deferred. So in that one, you say that while World War II was a boon to Black workers, little is known about the struggles they faced while working good government jobs.
Yes.
And your book is said to illuminate the stories of these Black workers. So I was wondering if you could just share one of those stories with us, because this is something I was not aware of.
Oh, wow. So on the cover of that book, and thank you for giving me a shout out, you will find the Gordon Parks photograph of Ella Watson. She's holding the broom, and it's almost he's like stylizing an ironic caricature of the American Gothic, very famous painting. And so the fact of the matter is, if you look very closely, she's missing a button in her dress, and the idea that she's by herself, right? She's not paired with somebody as with the iconic painting. And so I think it speaks to this idea of the loneliness, the isolation, and the ragged edges of the American dream. Here she is with a broom, and the only way she can have access to the American dream is by serving as a janitorial function late at night while other G girls or government girls flocked in from all over the United States, mostly white women, to pursue the American dream. When we talk about Rosie the Riveter and You Can Do It, not everybody was allowed to do it, right? And that means contributing to the American economy. The bodies were still needed, but there was still a hierarchy. A lot of people overlook and forget how our own very federal government was racially segregated upon Woodrow Wilson's, promulgation, upon suggestion of the Postmaster General at the time, Alfred Burleson. And so when you look at her, the ironic bitterness of this is that she came up north looking for a better opportunity. She had to. The South pushed her away. Her husband was killed prematurely. She had difficulty with her family, but she's still taking on her grandchildren, helping them out. But she goes in to start her job at night, cleaning up the office of a white woman who she scored higher on the typing exam. Exactly. So this is what we're talking about, even within the province of the federal government, where we are literally in the business of freedom, of democracy and liberty, right? We're literally in the business of maintaining the structure of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And even within this structure, see, it's one thing if you can say it's the private sector, maybe given in the past, because you're quote unquote free to discriminate. I can hire my family members or only my friends if I want to in a small business, right? Technically. But the federal government, what say you? Anyone and everyone who is a part of this country is free and able to contribute to this country. But you're telling me that if I'm Black, that I can only do so in a limited capacity with lower wages and slower raises? That's the travesty. And that's the story that I think we need to continue to tell so history does not repeat itself.
Yeah, that sounds like a very important book, and thank you for sharing that story with us. Getting back to your new book, Black Oscars, I just want to show a page here. You really break it down. You go by all the nominations and you have all the people's names and whether or not they won. So I was just really impressed by all the research. Like, you really did a deep dive piece by piece. And I'm wondering how long this took you to write. It must have taken a while.
I think a while is fair. I did have the occasion to make it out to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. And I guess my highlight of that trip was I actually had an opportunity to hold an actual statuette in my hand. Absolutely, yeah. I would have taken a picture, but security's pretty tight over there, so I had to put my phone in the locker. It's a lot heavier than what you think. But here's the point. The point is that I, Devin, have a fetish for facts. I mean, because when it comes to this idea of race, sometimes people think I'm taking it too personal, it's my opinion, and I just want people to see for themselves, right? That's the main thing. It's not a matter of what I think. It's a matter of, do you see for yourself what, the information is presenting us? And, the fact of the matter is that, when you look at the Golden Globes and the protests around that, the idea that it was revealed they don't have any Black members. I mean, even Tom Cruise handed back his Golden Globe. I mean, I think that the Academy Awards are probably going to be next in terms of this scrutiny if we don't perhaps take this data into account, because despite the passage of time, the question is, have we fundamentally, systemically changed what we're doing with these awards? And in many cases, I can cynically state that you can call them Academy Awards or Academy Rewards in terms of so many of these Black roles, that is, being honored for merely upholding the status quo. And so the role of the African American in our public life really hasn't necessarily changed or challenged the status quo much over time with respect to some of the larger, stickier issues of power and control.
Okay, so how long did it take you to put this book together?
Yeah. So it definitely took, I want to say from beginning to end, as far as conceptualization, I want to say a little bit more than 2 years, close to 2.5 years.
Still shorter than I thought. Well done.
Oh, wow. No, okay. But no, I mean, it's the labor of love. And the bottom line is that, I view this as a conversation starter. So there may be pieces in here that people disagree with or feel as if they can improve upon. I'm all for it. I just want to get the conversation started.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of great conversation starters in here. You give all the facts and the backstory and ways to look at it. So I was very impressed. Speaking of your book, Black Oscars, and the reviews, I was delighted, as someone who doesn't like nonfiction, to see that it was an accessible book. You know, even though it's very factual,
Oh, yes.
you wrote
Yes.
it in an accessible way. So I was wondering if that was something you kind of had to work at, or if it's always been like that for you.
No, I think it's something I had to work at because while we're being honest, I can tell you that early in my career, I probably sounded a little more complicated than I needed to. But here's the reason why. I think I had a chip on my shoulder. Being a graduate, PhD graduate at Georgetown University, I just wanted people to know that I had something legitimate to offer. And I live in an environment that is mostly white, dominated in terms of, academia is concerned. And I'm just very, very sensitive to this idea that my intellect not being respected. And so I think initially I might have tried too hard to quote unquote sound smart just to let people know that I am, a mind that is worthy of recognition, or, that someone should pay attention to. But then, how it is. Grandma always seems to be correct. Less is more, baby. Because the thing is, in trying to explain, because how's that paper going along? It's not a paper; it's a book. Right? I'm talking to my mom. She's asking me about my dissertation. How's that paper? No, Mom, it's not it's a book. Right? No, it's serious. So, in having those conversations with regular Black people, because these are regular Black people, right? They're not on the TV. I'm talking to my mom and I'm trying to explain this. I was like, I need to make this plain. I need to be clear. It is my job to take that which is complicated and make it understandable. Just because it's complicated doesn't mean the explanation has to be complicated, right? So I can explain it. So that was the attempt, Devin. I appreciate the feedback. The attempt was to take some of these complex racialized concepts, because I do touch upon what I call unholy trinity: romantic racialism, the negrophobia, and the femininity. These are complex concepts, and you can look them up. George Frederickson has written about it, Black Image and White Mind. But the bottom line is, I think in order for us to continue having the conversation, we need to understand one another. So that's where I wanted to try to be as clear as possible. And I am proud to say that, maybe this is a step in the right direction. Less is more. After all, I just put in a link in the chat if you want to share it. But USA Today thought it would be prudent to share with America. And USA Today is, I think, an understandable newspaper. I'm not casting aspersions, but, it's a newspaper that, while national, is, I think at a level that, most people can access.
Yeah, that's very important to make it, even it might be a complex idea, it's good to make it understandable for everyone. So that's really good. How did you feel about the 2021 Oscars, out of curiosity?
Well, I felt prophetic in that many of the nominees and the win really fulfilled the pattern that we discussed. So, for example, you look at Daniel Kaluuya's win, he fits a pattern that we talk about in the book, which is repeat contender. And so, believe it or not, or deja vu, right? This idea that it's not as if the wealth is being spread across all these new up and coming Black actors and actresses. It seems as if Hollywood decides upon this small group, and they just keep going back to this group. And so I keep saying, facetiously, God help us all if Denzel Washington, Viola Davis, and Morgan Freeman are all in the same car and get in a car accident. I mean, that's like half our nominees right there, right? And so Daniel Kaluuya is a repeat contender. He was nominated, as you know, in the Get Out movie 2017. And also another pattern. When you look at Judas and the Black Messiah, him and Lakeith Stanfield's nominations, and then you look at Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Viola Davis, her nomination, these are what I call para-realistic movies, whereby, a couple things going on. One is, in both of these movies, they both deal explicitly and expressly with the themes of poverty and racism. And see, over 80% of all the Black Academy Award nominees I've studied over a 91-year period are dealing with issues of poverty and racism. What's the issue? The issue is that it narrows the perspective by which most people understand African Americans. Because mind you, while there's many good people in the world, many are limited by what I call the 3 E's: limited experience, exposure, and education. So those who are limited are all the more dependent upon movies or television to give them some sort of information about, African American, life. Not just for the article about the white male, I think his name is Stevens, who played a East Indian character in the movie, the robot movie back in the days, like Short Circuit. He said that he learned about how to become this Indian character just by watching TV, right? So my point is that, television and is a viable means if you're limited in terms of if you haven't been to the country, if you haven't dealt with the people in person. And so all I'm saying is that if people only understand African American, most times they go to the movie theater and they're walking away with this idea that anytime I see an African American, it's only about poverty or racism. That is going to, that is going to narrow their perception. And on the flip side, many of my white brothers and sisters are liberated by what I call the freedom of fantasy, right? So it's not uncommon to see white teenagers in a rotating gyrosphere with dinosaurs prancing all around in Jurassic World. Or, even if I have a talking teddy bear who's able to drive and go hard partying with me and Ted, right? This is all part of fantasy. Or, God forbid, we talk about X-Wing fighters in space. So I think what those movies, the recent Academy Award nominations, is they just merely affirmed that while it's absolutely awesome to see people being recognized for their hard work, at the same time, in the larger picture, remember I'm looking at the bigger picture, right? Pardon the pun. It still seems as if when it comes to African Americans on screen, Hollywood still suffers from a limited imagination.
I mean, I have noticed that there are often people nominated over and over again. So that is a very good point to bring up. So far, you've written 2 books on Hollywood and race, of course, Black Oscars being your latest. Do you expect this to be a topic that you delve into again in the future, maybe as things hopefully evolve?
I do. I'm hopeful. I'm cautiously optimistic. But Devin, honestly, I think the bottom line is time will tell. Remember, people gave Hattie McDaniel a standing ovation when she won her Academy Award in 1939 for Gone with the Wind. And so there was a lot of encouragement and hope that the floodgates were going to open. I think it was a number of years before we even saw the next Academy Award winner. And so right, it wasn't until the 60s with Sidney Poitier, right? So we're talking about a couple of decades have gone by. And so I think if the Academy continues what it tried to do this past year in terms of challenging its voters to think about additional perspectives, then perhaps this will be the start of something new. But if history is any guide, there have always been sparks, there's always been glimpses, but the overall mechanism hasn't really changed much. So I will remain cautiously optimistic, but at the same time, I think it's time for the Academy to because we patronized the Academy for over 90 something years. If you think about it, we don't have to. It's a private industry event. Why are we so public? Why is our nose only 2 inches away from the screen? So enthralled over what they decide. I mean, it's a private function. You don't have any say in the votes, and you don't even know who votes. But we publicly celebrate that which they decide privately. I think it's time for them to say, if they still want us to continue to patronize them, if they still want our patronage and our money and our support, that they'll do what's necessary to make sure that they're speaking to all the audiences that continue to patronize them.
Yeah, I know every year it seems like there's a few small changes for the better, but hopefully they can compound that and make some real headway, and that would be good. As continuing with movies, I just really want to know what your favorite movie from 2020 was, since I'm imagining you watch every movie ever released.
No, I can't get around to all of them. I can't get around to all of them. But I think one of the more fun movies I've seen in a while that challenged me and stimulated me, had to be actually, well, it was last year's Best Picture winner. So I guess technically it came out in 19, but I saw it in 2020, and that was the film by Bong. Excuse me. I want to make sure I get his name correct. Bong Joon-ho. Excuse me. And that was for his Academy Award winning movie that I thought was quite well done in terms of the classism and just the stairs and the symbolism that they represented from the movie Parasite, of course. And so I thought, when I saw that movie, I just asked myself, how come I don't see more movies like this, right? They're not quite as formulaic, but are nonetheless stimulating, provide commentary, and something for us to talk about, as a family. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, I know that was one that people were talking about for quite a while. So it seems like a good pick for 2020. Well, if you've enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Gooding as much as I have, make sure that you sign up for his virtual author talk that's coming this Saturday on the 15th of May, and it's going to be at 11 a.m. until 12. Second only to the Super Bowl in audience and size revenue, the Oscars are more than a mere ceremony. They're a phenomenon. Hosted by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences for over 90 years. The Oscars have long been considered the pinnacle of fantasy, beauty, romance, and high class. They are eagerly anticipated and are heavily discussed. It is only recently that movements such as #OscarsSoWhite have raised awareness around the more complicated legacy of the Oscars and African American participation in film. Join us as we take a look behind the scenes at racial patterns in African Americans for African Americans that have been both changed and stayed the same over time. After this presentation, you will never see the Oscars the same way again. And after this discussion, I'm sure that's going to be true. So make sure to sign up for the author talk with Dr. Gooding on Saturday, and we both hope to see you there. Thanks so much, Dr. Gooding.
Thank you, Devin. I look forward to it.